Good evening and welcome to Get the Facts, a live discussion on COVID-19. I am your host, William Neal. Thank you very much for joining us. Of course, this is a discussion that is done in collaboration with the Ministry of Health and Wellness and Channel 5. It is meant to be an interactive discussion, and we encourage you to send in your questions as we are joined by professionals regionally and nationally. This evening, if you want to send in a question, you can do so via our News 5 Facebook live stream at News 5 Live or using hashtag #GetTheFacts. We'll start with a revision of COVID numbers for the week of August 9th to August 16th. Total tests done, 7,152. Total positive cases, 572. And total deaths, 5. Vaccination numbers, total persons vaccinated for the week, 8,417. Total single vaccinated for week, 2,900. Total fully vaccinated for the week, 5,517. Our cumulative data stands at total vaccinated 147,830. Total fully vaccinated 60,660. Our objective for tonight's show, to show the risks of how a person can contract coronavirus and COVID variants after being vaccinated. We'll also have a check-in with the KHMH to find out more about the surge they have been managing. Now, our first segment is going to feature our special regional guest, Dr. Peter Figueroa, Professor of Public Health, Epidemiology, and HIV/AIDS at the University of the West Indies in Mona, Jamaica. Good evening, Dr. Figueroa, and welcome to our show.
Good evening, William. Good evening to all of Belize. Thank you for having me.
Now, Dr. Figueroa, I managed to look at your bio, sort of, and I noticed that you've done some groundbreaking work. So let's start there. You have a very, decorated history. And of course, some of it dates back to the work that you did with HIV and AIDS, and some of the trepidation that people had at that time. How has that work actually prepared you to continue working in areas that people may have some hesitation?
Well, when HIV broke in the early 1980s, most people were very afraid of this disease, and a lot of health providers were afraid of themselves catching it, although we recognized that in order to get it, usually you really had to have sex or, get it through an injection or blood. So in those days, there was a terrible stigma associated with HIV. And some of us, both in public health as well as clinicians, felt that we just had to look after the persons who were ill, and we just had to deal with that new pandemic. Well, as we know, we've made tremendous progress. We have good treatment for HIV. We know how to prevent it, but we still unfortunately continue to have too many persons getting infected with HIV. Now we have the COVID pandemic, and we are going through an entirely new learning experience, but we've learned a lot, and the most important thing I would say is that we have highly effective and safe vaccines that can protect persons from COVID.
Now, just to put things in context, I know that you're also working through PAHO. So this is a regional initiative that you're also involved in, as well as a global initiative. Let's start off taking it local for you to Jamaica. What's the situation there, and what is the attitude towards vaccinations?
Well, Jamaica is going through a very serious increase or surge in the number of COVID cases. We had a surge of cases just that peaked about 3 months ago, and it came down, but almost immediately we've got a new surge, and it is probably due to the Delta variant. And we are seeing our hospitals are now under severe strain because we've had a massive number of severe cases requiring hospitalization. And unfortunately, we're also getting an increase in deaths. We are a bit behind in our vaccination because we had difficulty getting the vaccine. So we only have just over 10% of our population vaccinated, which means that this surge is quite serious for us.
Now, when you look at what people have termed as COVID fatigue, did that play a role? Because I know Jamaica, from what I've followed on the news, has been very aggressive in terms of the lockdowns, etc. How has the general behavior and attitude of the population itself actually contributed to the surge that they're now experiencing?
Yeah, well, the majority of people have tried to be careful, and most people wear masks, try and maintain physical distancing. But with the Delta variant, which we think is responsible, remember, this variant transmits much more readily, and it's very difficult to maintain physical distancing on public transportation. And unfortunately, there have been some gatherings of persons where people are not fully following the protocols, wearing masks and physically distancing. So we're seeing this surge now. I think that the majority of persons in Jamaica would like to get vaccinated, despite the misinformation which circulates on the social media. There are many people who are cautious and want to wait and see. But with the Delta variant now, I think the majority of them are ready to be vaccinated. But of course, to roll out the vaccine, it has to be done systematically, and it takes time.
Now, would the access to vaccinations, would that have been a game changer for the situation in Jamaica?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if we had had more vaccine earlier, and it was rolled out, then we would be closer to a situation like what you see in the United Kingdom or the United States. In the UK, over 70% of people have been vaccinated now, and they're seeing a massive increase in the number of COVID cases. But those persons who are vaccinated, very few of them end up in hospital. It's persons who are not vaccinated or only partially vaccinated who get severe illness. And this is the case in the United States as well. Those states in the US that are largely affected, many of the southern states, is where persons were reluctant to get the vaccine. So it's an epidemic now of the unvaccinated, primarily.
Now, the question that I have, because of your work with HIV, you know, very often it's very hard to manage public discussions on issues that are very divisive. Whether it's politics with a capital P or not, people tend to be very emotive when responding to the questions of vaccinations. How do you get someone to actually have that conversation and perhaps even convince them to do a rethink? I know a lot of the emphasis has been more on shaming people to say, how could you be so stupid or something of that sort. But how do you engage in a conversation respecting the other person, but at the same time encouraging them to do a rethink?
Yes, you ask a very important question. I think it is wrong to blame people or to shame them. This is a new pandemic. We are all learning how it is spread, how to prevent it. People, many are afraid, they're concerned, and they don't necessarily know what is going on. For me to stay informed, I have to read every single day the different publications being put out on COVID. And I'm in a privileged position because I actually sit on the World Health Organization task, it's really a working committee on COVID vaccines. And I chair the Pan American Health Organization Technical Advisory Group on immunization. So I'm in a position where I'm able to get access to the latest data. There is a responsibility on persons like myself and ministry officials and those who are better positioned to patiently explain to the people what we know and admit that there are certain things we're not sure about. The vaccines are safe, they are effective, but they're not 100%. We have to explain how is it that we were able to get this vaccine so quickly. Many people do not know that it's a similar virus that was causing SARS in 2005. It was a coronavirus that you could say is a cousin of the current COVID virus. So in 2005, when they had the severe acute respiratory syndrome and it spread and was causing death, they started developing a vaccine against that coronavirus. And in 2012, there was another coronavirus that caused the Middle East respiratory syndrome, MERS. And therefore, more effort was put into developing a coronavirus vaccine. So when the Chinese scientists isolated and they coded the genome, that's the genetic material of the virus, in January of last year, they shared it with the international scientific community. And therefore, those companies that had developed a vaccine against the coronavirus that was causing SARS in 2005, they simply just changed the genetic code so that they now had a vaccine that they could test out against COVID. And they immediately put it into animal studies in the lab. And then they were able to put it into human clinical trials. And this is how we were able to get a vaccine so quickly against COVID.
Now, I particularly like the fact that you said we have to be willing to have the conversation and to admit that there are some challenges that we still face globally. Now, one of those that is taking up a lot of airspace has to do with breakthrough transmissions. Let's start there in terms of defining as simply as you can, what exactly does that mean for the general population?
Yeah, well, a breakthrough infection is considered one in which a person has been vaccinated and the vaccine is to protect them from getting COVID, and yet despite being vaccinated, that they get infected and developed COVID. Now, we have seen breakthrough infections with other vaccines. So, for instance, the childhood vaccines like DPT, the vaccine against diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus, it is known you have to give 3 different doses of DPT, then you give 2 booster doses. You give another booster dose at 18 months, another one at about 5 years of life, because people can have breakthrough infections due to pertussis. Similarly with measles, if you give measles vaccine and you only get 1 measles vaccine and you vaccinate 100 children with measles vaccine, you're going to find that perhaps anywhere from about 5 to 6 out of those 100 children could still develop measles. So we give a second measles vaccine to try and fully protected all 100 children. Now we have very good, effective vaccines against COVID, but they're not 100%. So depending on which vaccine you're using, if you vaccinate 100 persons with the COVID vaccine and they get the 2 doses that they're supposed to get, you may still get 5 persons or even up to 10 persons out of 100 who may get COVID. The difference is that if you're fully vaccinated, it is most unlikely that you will get a severe case of COVID. What you'll do is you'll get a mild case, or you may get an infection without having any symptoms whatsoever. So those would be breakthrough infections, and you may also have symptoms where you get a mild case of COVID. It's very unusual with the breakthrough infections that you get severe COVID requiring hospitalization.
A simple follow-up question is, therefore, is it worth it? Because some people are saying, well, you can get infected anyway, so it may not be worth it because it's not 100%.
Well, that's like asking a student who is taking an exam, is it worth it to get 80% or 85% right? Or do you want a 0? Because if you don't get the vaccine, it's like getting a 0 in your test. You've got no help from the vaccine because you've not taken it. Your immune system has got no help to protect yourself against the virus. Now, this is particularly serious for persons who are older, because older persons, if you are over 60 and you get COVID, there is a 1 in 8 chance that you may actually die from COVID. If you're over 70, it may be higher. If you're over 50, it will be lower. But even young people who usually, if they get COVID, they overcome the symptoms and they're fine. But we're still getting younger people who are not vaccinated, young adults, and increasingly now with the Delta variant, we're even getting teenagers and young children who are getting COVID, and some of them are getting seriously ill, and we've had deaths. So in a way, you're playing Russian roulette with your life, so it is better that you have some protection, even if it's not 100%. And it's good protection, because if you do get infected, you are unlikely to get a severe case.
My final question as we wrap up, because you spoke about children, for example, being infected. What is the major concern there? Because some people will argue that, the percentage of children who may die from it might be very low. So why be so concerned about children and their exposure? given the fact that they may not be vaccinated, but they also stand a fairly good chance of surviving the ravages of COVID?
Well, you know, with the previous variants and what we call the original strain of the virus, we found that in most instances, children were either not affected, they were less likely to get infected, or if they got infected, then it was very unusual for them to get seriously ill. Unfortunately, with the Delta variant, we are finding that a fair number of children are becoming seriously ill, and we're even seeing deaths among children. So if we think again of the childhood diseases that we are familiar with, one of them is meningitis, brain fever. There is one of the vaccines that we give to our children, Haemophilus influenza, that can cause brain fever. And that vaccine that we give them, the pentavalent vaccine, actually prevents those children from getting that particular type of brain fever. Now, it's not a vast number of children who normally would get brain fever from that organism, from that germ. But because we've got an excellent vaccine to protect those children, then we vaccinate all our children so that nobody, no child, and no parent suffer the pain of their child getting a severe illness, requiring hospitalization, and sometimes dying. So although it's not vast numbers of children at this time, I think we're all moving in a direction where once we have a vaccine that can be safely given to the children, and now studies are showing that certainly children 12 years of age and older can receive the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines. And they're doing studies to give these vaccines in younger children. Then clearly we need to get all our frontline health workers and other frontline emergency workers vaccinated. We need to get our elderly vaccinated. Then we need to get our entire adult population and children vaccinated as soon as we have enough vaccine. Because the more people that we can give some protection, the better.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Figueroa. We'll ask you if you can just remain with us. We will have another segment where our viewing public will get an opportunity to ask questions directed at you. Thank you very much for joining us for this segment of the show.
Thank you, William.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we will be moving into the situation at the KHMH with the recent surge of COVID cases. Don't go anywhere. Get the Facts returns after these messages.
Why should you wear your mask? To protect myself. My friends. My family and others. I wear my mask because I love my grandparents. With so many reasons to wear a mask, we continue to advise persons to wear a face mask properly, covering both nose and mouth. Together, we can keep Belize COVID-19 safe.
At Belize Diagnostics Center, we offer FDA-approved PCR testing. Get your results as quickly as 1 hour. Don't risk exposure to COVID-19 by going elsewhere. We take appointments, or we can come to your home or office using our concierge service with no additional fees. We have 10 locations countrywide. Call or WhatsApp 613-TEST. That's 613-8378 to schedule your test today.
With the rise in COVID cases and youths being infected, it is time to be safe and stay safe with SAFE, sanitization and fumigation of environments. Let our professionally trained and certified team be your solution to a clean, healthier, and safe environment for your home or business. For more information, call or WhatsApp 613-0222 or visit us at 2.5 miles Philip Golson Highway beside Friendship Restaurant. Choose the one you can trust. Choose safe.
Save, save, save. The credit union way.
Member owners are encouraged to save regularly, borrow wisely, and repay promptly.
No use keeping the money in your pocket. Soon as you turn wrong, you know you ain't got it. So as money goes from hand to hand, give your cash to the umbrella man. I telling you, save, save, save. The credit union way. Save, save, save. It will make you rich someday.
How does the AstraZeneca vaccine work? The vaccine provides support to help your body develop immunity to the virus that causes COVID-19. The body is left with a supply of memory cells that will remember how to fight the virus. It takes a few weeks for the body to produce the antibodies after vaccination. How long does it take to build immunity after taking the first dose of the vaccine? There is protection 14 days after a person's first dose. However, that initial protection may decline over time, which is the reason why it is so important to get the second shot. How long after the first dose should one take the second dose? The second dose should be given between week 8 and week 12. Are there any deaths associated with the AstraZeneca vaccine? There have been no deaths associated with the AstraZeneca vaccine. Vaccines save lives. They remain the safest, most effective, and cost-effective medical tool developed. Increased uptake of the vaccine is the best way to stop this pandemic, save lives, and return to normalcy.
Last month, my father passed away due to COVID-19. My father was not vaccinated. He was not. To be truthful, the things he would have said would be the things that we're hearing around town. But there were also some of the other things, some of the other myths that really I was trying to tell him, no, Daddy, you need to get your vaccine. But I couldn't convince him in time.
I think what they're doing is a disservice to this country. In my mind, what they're doing is creating fear among people when they should be spreading a message of hope. What I hear them say has no basis, no scientific basis for the assertions they're making. And more than anything else, there's no legal basis for their assertion.
Would he have gotten that vaccine, he would still be here cracking his jokes and being his fun, crazy self, and we really miss him.
Welcome back to Get the Facts. I am your host, William Neal, and we're switching our focus now on the situation at the KHMH. Unfortunately, we could not be joined by Nurse Casilda Bowman, but we do have a video from her explaining why she could not be with us tonight. Casilda?
Hi guys, good night. My name is Casilda Bowman. I am the unit manager of the COVID department and patient under investigation unit. First of all, I'd like to apologize on behalf of Dr. Bradley, our specialist, and myself for not being able to make it. We really had a long day today. Nevertheless, I'll still give you guys some information on the status of our patient here at the Karl Huschner Memorial Hospital. In total, we have 12 patients, with 5 in the patient under investigation unit, 3 being adults, 1 that is critically ill, that is on the mechanical ventilator. We have 2 that is stable, and we have 2 babies that are still waiting for their results to come out. In our COVID department, we had a total number of 8. We just lost 1, so we have 7 at the moment. And of the 7, we have 3 that is on the mechanical ventilator that are critically ill. We also have 1 person that is on our high flow, which is also critically ill. And we have 3 persons that are receiving oxygen support. So guys, as you recognize, daily we are seeing our numbers going up. It is becoming overwhelming. It is becoming a lot. All I can say, guys, is that if you're not vaccinated, get vaccinated. If you're still iffy about it, I ask that you make an informed decision, read your research, and if based on the research you recognize that, hey, okay, it is safe, then please get the vaccine. If not, guys, please help us to help you by following the measures that are in place. Washing your hands, wearing your mask, social distancing, and decrease the gathering of crowds. These are things that will help us to mitigate the rise in our numbers that we are seeing. So that's all I'm asking, guys. Please, it's really hard. I wish you guys can see what I see on a daily basis, so that you guys can understand how serious it is for us. I don't think words can explain the urgency that I feel on a daily basis, that I see patients go through on a daily basis. But please, guys, protect yourself. Do the right thing. All right, that's all I'm asking. Please, guys, we're here for you, but let's help ourselves by getting vaccinated. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you very much, Casilda. And to continue with our conversation, we have the head of the intensive care unit at the KHMH, Dr. Pedro Arriaga. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Now, I want to start off because Nurse Casilda Bowman spoke about 12 people being in the intensive care unit, right? And for a lot of people, that might not seem like a lot of people. But what does that really mean when they're on mechanical ventilators and requiring that kind of care?
The patient is supposed to be a mechanical ventilator. It's a very special patient because we are trying to control as much as possible how is the breathing process of that patient. Especially the patient who has COVID is a patient supposed to have serious respiratory problems, and they need to be sometimes sedated and paralyzed and connected to a machine in such a way that the machine will give us the time gap for that patient to control the disease. So the machine by itself and the ventilator is not therapy by itself, you know, because this is just going to help us for the patient to get better with time. The problem with COVID is that we have no medication available for that disease. So we are guessing, and some patients there were lucky enough to receive some therapy that had been, you know, available sometimes. But even with that, we have serious problems to control patients. So if we have a patient on a mechanical ventilator, we should be having a ratio 1:1. That means 1 nurse per 1 patient. Because the patient you see there, you have not only the machine, they have monitors, they have infusion pumps, that also have special computers that help us to infuse medications a proper, you know, a proper amount in a proper way. Also is that the patient need to be fed, the patient need to be rotated, The patient need to be controlled. The patient need to be clean. The patient need to be caressed, you know. All those things is extremely difficult when you have so many issues with personnel, because we are short of personnel all the time.
Now, I'd like to also, thank you very much, Dr. Arriaga. I'd like to say at this point that we're also joined by epidemiologist Dr. Selma Bermudez by Zoom. Good evening, Doc. How are you?
Hi. I'm fine, thanks. Hi.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the variants that are leading to the kind of situation that we have. You know, some people are saying, how did we get all the way to Delta? You know, I never heard about Alpha or Beta or anything else. How did the variants actually escalate to this point? And why, in terms of the public conversation, you did not hear about the earlier variation or strains?
Well, you know, the original strain is no more here, is not too much concern. What we have is viruses, like everything in this world, is evolving and mutating. And so this virus had the ability to mutate and change. So there are different kind of variants, like the alpha that was described, you know, before in Great Britain, and then we have the beta that was described in South Africa, and the gamma is supposed to be described in Brazil, and then we had the delta that was described in India, and then mu. So we had different kind of variants, different kind of mutations of the virus, and due to the global, you know, movement of people in this world, because it's so fast right now, people that could be in one area of the world right now, and in a few hours could be at the end, another extreme. So it's not impossible that patients are supposed to be able to be carriers and transmit the disease to some other people.
Now, the other question that I have is, we're looking at the resources that we have at the KHMH, and that is a part of the challenge. How taxed are we in terms of human resources and also equipment to provide the proper care for individuals who may need to be placed in the ICU?
Well, the COVID unit was, remember that this hospital was not really built, you know, trying to control a pandemic or an isolation area that we have right now. So we created those areas in such a way that we could be able to facilitate for the patients to be taken care of, especially because this disease is so transmissible and contagious. So at the COVID unit, we have 9 beds, and then we have approximately 12 beds that's supposed to be considered like for patients that have under investigation. This is where we're standing right now. But depending on we have an overflow of patients and the amount of patients is increasing, we could expand the emergency to have more or less a total amount of 36 patients that they could be in the emergency. Now, the problem again we have is not only the amount of space, it's the amount of personnel that is supposed to be dealing. Again, you know, we have seriously ill patients. You don't need only one nurse. You need doctors. You need nurses supposed to be taking with patients. When the doctors, they had to intubate the patient, you got 3 or 4 people working with one person. It's sedation, it's controlling medications, it's controlling monitors, it's controlling everything is working properly. So it's one patient is a tremendous amount of, you know, work. So we have we have 4 or 5 patients that are intubated. It's a tremendous amount of work. So people, they come in there in the morning time, they're leaving late around 10 o'clock, 10:30 every night, you know, trying to go home and come back the following day to do the kind of shift. And people working at night time, they have the same kind of issue. So it's extremely difficult that we could be able to cope, you know, with the amount of, you know, demand that we have right now with the patients that are flowing into the area. Again, you know, probably somehow we go into the numbers and those kind of things. But really and truly, you know, having this, the COVID unit is an intensive care unit. People, they are really sick there, you know. People, they are not only, they are supplying with only with the ventilators, it's all kind of things. It's medications, it's blood tests, so all those kind of things, you know. The machine, they have to be properly set. The patient is supposed to be controlled properly sedated. And patient is supposed to have COVID. It's a very complex type of disease where you have not only problem with the lungs, but you have problem with the kidneys, you have problem with the brain, you have problem with the with the blood vessels and the clots, so we have a very complex disease that is extremely difficult that only one person could be able to manage those kind of patients. So it should be a team of people working, trying to make the patient to get better. But we have 4 or 5 patients with amount of, shorting of personnel, shorting of doctors and nurses. It's extremely difficult that we could be able to control everything in our patients. Plus, we are short the technology because we know, like you said before, 80% of patients probably going to be asymptomatics, but 20% going to be, let's say, maybe 15, 20% more. 5% is supposed to be seriously ill. But our hospital, it's a hospital 120 beds, It's the referral center of the entire country. But we have only a few patients, and we're receiving the patients that come from the entire country, not only from the city. So, and when the patients that come in from the districts, sometimes they come in very sick, and the patient, they need to be intubated right now. So how the patient is supposed to be responding will depend, how bad the patient is coming to the hospital. But again, the space is there. We have approximately more or less like 21 ventilators. Those ventilators, we are coping with not only the COVID unit, but also the intensive care that is supposed to be 7 or 6 more beds. So because natural disease continue. So we have the COVID unit, but we have the patients that have natural diseases. They come in with pneumonias, they come in with heart attacks, they come in with strokes, they come in with serious
traffic
infections,
accidents,
shootings, and those kind of things. And they need operating room, they need ICU, they need proper care. So they need nurses, they need doctors. So it's extremely difficult that we're going to be able to concentrate all our personnel in just one specific area because we had to provide service to the entire country with different kind of demands and situations, right?
Now, I want to bring Dr. Bermudez into the conversation. And my question is, as someone in epidemiology, what are we seeing in the wider population through your professional lens that we're not necessarily seeing as untrained individuals?
Well, right now, what we're seeing is that they have a lot of patients out there or in the general population that would come in and they would think it's just a cough or a cold. And they come into the hospital because of our protocol that we have in place where we swab everybody that comes in with symptoms or who will be admitted. We're seeing by rapid testing, we're seeing people positive. So there could be a lot of people walking around with COVID and they don't know. So that's one of the things that we're seeing. For example, this weekend, we had 5 patients who came into our emergency and they were positive by rapid test. 3 of them got admitted, but 2 of them, they were severely sick, so they were discharged. We had to do contact tracing on these families. So that's one thing that, that is out there. A lot of the patients, we need people to go and get tested if you have been exposed, so we could know exactly what we're working with out in the public.
Is it a situation, before we go to the break, because I'll have Dr. Arriaga after the break, but I wanted to ask you also, as you're looking at the situation in the general public, and we know that some hotspots have been identified, and we have the recommendations for different courses of action. What would you say to individuals for them to decide or to enact on their own behalf without necessarily just waiting for the government to enact some kind of special statutory instrument or special measures?
Well, I just want to say, since the vaccine rollout in Belize, which was the 1st of March, we have had 71 admissions to the COVID unit. And from that 71 admission, only 16 were vaccinated. 13 of them had first dose, and the next 3 were fully vaccinated. The others were not vaccinated. So with that, you can see that the people that are getting sick, they are not vaccinated, and they're the ones that are severely ill. They're the ones that end up on the ventilator. So this is not a joke. You know, I will not sit here and tell people, oh, you have to get vaccine because XYZ, or you will be charged or whatever. But think about, you know, ending up in the hospital in the COVID unit for 5 to 10 days, the possibility of going on ventilator. You know, this is what is happening right now.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Bermudez. With that, we're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll have, we're running out of time very quickly. We're just going to have our final words. So don't go anywhere. Get the Facts wraps up after these messages.
No make no sense at all. No kind of sense. That Belize video when I have that sign up there in China for.
That not in your Chinese at all, that in Spanish.
You understand what it said then?
Yeah. It said wear your face mask properly, cover your nose and your mouth.
Will help prevent the spread of COVID to others. Together we could make Belize safe.
Wear your mask properly over your mouth and nose to protect yourself and others. Together we can keep Belize COVID-19 safe.
Looking good, Mom. Hey guys, I'm off to run some errands. Please tidy up this place. No! How did you guys do it?
We got cleaners.
Cleaners?
You know it, Dad.
Cleaner. It works.
Wake up! Now which cheese you think you may eat all the while? Gallo cheese with the blue rooster on the label is the traditional and the real deal. The original Dutch, redback or hard cheese in a Belize. Be aware! Check your label and make sure it is in English and for the Belize market. Gallo cheese with the blue rooster. The real deal. Santiago Castillo Limited, supporting and building our Belizean community for 95 years and counting.
Gallo Edam Dutch cheese, aged and tropicalized, the best formula for the Belize market, exclusively distributed by Santiago Castillo Limited.
Whether you're at home, on the road, at work, or at school, if you see news happening or suspect that something might be up, call or text the Channel 5 News Belize tip line at 672-5555. You don't have to give us your name, just give us the tip. That's 672-5555. Call or text us so we can check it out.
We do our best in the media to get the information shared on vaccines with you, so you can make that decision. We aim to be accurate and timely, and will continue to do so for the development of our people and this country. I will take the vaccine when it's my turn. I urge you to take it too. Hashtag Get Vaccinated Belize.
It is my time
to protect your life.
Don't wait to vaccinate.
I believe in the COVID-19 vaccine.
Do not hesitate, Belize. Vaccinate. Be COVID-19 safe.
The vaccine is the best way to protect lives.
Don't wait. Vaccinate.
If you care, love them,
protect them,
vaccinate them.
As Belize continues to shield its people from the worst ravages of this pandemic, we must continue to keep our country safe by ensuring reliable supply chains for critical components for the fight ahead. Belize's oxygen supply is safe with 300% more oxygen supply in country than is necessary. However, Fabregas continues to make our oxygen supply chain even more robust and responsive to a potential worst-case scenario. Through supply arrangements established and secured by Fabregas, our country can receive critical life-saving oxygen from 5 regional neighbors in Mexico and Central America through marine and/or land transportation. So, in addition, Fabregas has secured additional reliable sources of life-saving oxygen using a diversity of transportation modes and countries of origin. Fabregas Belize Limited. We got your back.
And welcome back. We're getting ready to wrap our show for tonight. Of course, this is the series, Get the Facts. And we have our regional guest, Dr. Peter Figueroa, still with us on via Zoom. And we also have in studio still Dr. Pedro Arriaga. Now, Dr. Arriaga, I want to talk a little bit about the cost considerations, because we've been talking about experimental drugs that are being used, and are we using them in Belize?
Yeah, you know, we follow a recommendation that follow from National Institute of Health in the United States and the CDC. Here in Belize, a few months ago, we started using remdesivir as a medication that had been used in patients who have moderate to severe COVID. We have available for our patients, but not because you use the medication, because up to this time we have no medication that has been shown that is effective enough to control the disease. So for patients that are moderate and severe, we have been using remdesivir. And the cost of remdesivir, you know, in the United States, like maybe closer to $2,500 US per treatment. And if you go for insurance, it's a bit more like $3,000. If you're going through the Indian market, you know, you could get maybe the medication for $600 for treatment. But even that is expensive. You know? People have been using about, for example, cocktails of antibiotics and this kind of thing, you know. But cocktail for antibiotics is not for severe disease. It's for patients that have mild to moderate disease, that have high risk factors like elderly people, that have comorbidity that they're supposed to be using trying to stop the disease to get worse, you know. Patients in mechanical ventilation no use cocktails. But cocktails, they're expensive and they are not available here. New medication, like for example, like tocilizumab, as a medication has been there for quite some time. It's what we call an interleukin-6 inhibitor. It's a medication that will control the inflammatory reaction in patients that have COVID. This kind of medication right now, we have a few patients who are receiving in the private sector, and we have a patient in the KHMH receive it. we talk about in between $4,000 to $5,000. Single, dose for a patient. And that will not guarantee that the patient will survive.
Wow.
So if we say that, and Dr. Figueroa mentioned that, we have no effective medication for this kind of patients. If the vaccination is there, and even with the Delta variant, we know that even the AstraZeneca, they give us 60% of possibility to control the contracting the disease, and 93% of protection, in the hospital not to die of the disease. And there is no effective treatment. You're playing your life when you get vaccinated. Not only that, you're overwhelming the health system that we have in the country. Yeah. You're go to the hospital, get extremely sick, We have short amount of patients, short amount of personnel that's supposed to be taking care of you. Very expensive. Those patients not spend 1 or 2 days in the hospital. When they're in the COVID unit, they spend 2 or 3 weeks time, sometimes 1 month in the hospital. So the amount of the amount of money we're spending is tremendous. The amount of resources that we're using in our patients is tremendous. We have no medication for the disease. The patients, they are dying. We used to have a lot of elderly people, and maybe Selma could say that maybe in the future. But we have a lot of young patients that have no background. They have no comorbidities, they have no diabetes, they have no hypertension, and they have no previous medical history. And they are dying of the disease right now in ICUs. And they have been receiving some of the medications and they are not responding and continue dying. So it's, as Nurse Bowman was saying before, it's so sad when you go to that unit. This is a terrible disease, The patient died in isolation. The low ones, you can't even go and see your low one because the patient is contaminated and infectious. And the patient died there, no possibility to have any communication. That's it.
Wow.
It breaks your heart when the patient, they are just saying goodbye to the family members in the iPads, because they are going to be intubated. You see, it's extremely difficult, not only for a patient, but for our personnel working in those areas.
Now, let's take a quick break before I go to Dr. Figueroa. There is a question, Shania Young. What happens if not enough people get vaccinated? Dr. Figueroa, let me start with you there.
Yeah, well, clearly, if enough people do not get vaccinated, it means that those persons who are not vaccinated are at risk of becoming infected and getting COVID. And they may get a severe disease requiring hospitalization. And unfortunately, some of them are going to die. And this is the problem right now in countries like the United States and the United Kingdom, where the majority of people have been vaccinated. The persons who are getting sick and dying are primarily persons who are not vaccinated. So, we can see what is happening and we should learn from it. And at the earliest opportunity that we have a chance to be vaccinated, we should get ourselves vaccinated.
All right. Now, I want to ask Dr. Figueroa one other question. Now, as we're talking about vaccinations and we're talking about breakthrough infections, are there any connections per se, the same way Dr. Arriaga was talking about no medication being available to really cure the disease, right? Some people immediately when you start talking about vaccinations, they raise the whole idea of breakthrough infections, saying that's basically checkmate for the vaccination. What would you say in response to that?
Well, taking the vaccine could, in fact, protect your life. Because without the vaccine, someone who is elderly or someone with comorbidities or any person of any age who happens to get severe COVID, it means that they could end up in hospital, in ICU, and they could die. If you get the vaccine and if you get 2 doses of the vaccine, so you're fully vaccinated, then it means even if you get infected, even with the Delta variant, it is unlikely that you will get severe disease. You'll only get a mild disease like the common cold, or you may simply get an infection and have no symptoms whatsoever. So the choice is yours, but it seems pretty logical that if the vaccine is going to help to protect you, then it's better to take it.
Dr. Arriaga?
I agree 100% with that. You know, there is no way that we could be able to protect our population, our community, if we don't get vaccine or vaccinated everybody. So without vaccines, you can open the doors for the infection to come to your house and not only infect you, but infect your loved ones, your children, your parents, your grandparents, yourself, and then the disease will continue spreading, you know, and then we have more and more and more cases. So again, we know the vaccines that work well, even against the Delta variant. People, they are concerned about the Delta variant, but you could die of the Gamma or the Alpha and the Beta. It doesn't matter, you know. Once you get the disease, there is a possibility you could die. So it doesn't matter you have a Delta. You know, the transmissibility of the Delta is more. We know it's supposed to be more contagious. We're not so sure about the mortality, but in general, you could die of Alpha, Beta, Gamma. It doesn't matter. And the vaccines, they are definitely a protection against all the variants. So why you close the door for a protection and a shield that you have when you know that this disease is lethal and that there is no possibility to get medications? That you'll finish in the ICU isolated again without no possibility to get in touch with your family. And with a ventilator, that probably the possibility of dying is extremely high. So all those things, so again, no, it doesn't matter if it's Alpha, Beta, Gamma. You need the vaccine because the vaccines, they are effective and efficient to control the infection against all of the variants. What we need to know right now is that all our population is supposed to be vaccinated. Let's reduce the chances that we have more sick people. That's fine to have a flu, but finish in the hospital with that tube, you know, about to die is a completely different kind of situation.
Now, we're getting ready to wrap our show. Let's go back to Dr. Figueroa. Dr. Figueroa, I'm going to give you a minute to give your final words, please.
Sure. Well, you know, there are over 200 million confirmed cases of COVID globally and over 4 million deaths. And the truth is that these are significant underestimates of the true figures. They're probably at least underestimates by at least 20%. I would say that every one of us now knows someone who has died from COVID. We know someone. Those of us who are doctors, we know doctors and nurses who have got infected with COVID and died. We all have a relative, a friend, or we know of somebody, including prominent people from all classes and backgrounds in our countries who have died from COVID. We do have safe and effective vaccines. Over 4.4 billion doses have been given across the globe. And wherever these vaccines have been given, they have helped to reduce the number of deaths and reduce the number of persons in hospital. COVID is going to be with us for the foreseeable future. We've got to get as many people vaccinated as possible, but during this period, even if you're vaccinated, you're going to have to continue to wear a mask, maintain physical distancing, and avoid crowds, especially indoors. Just think of the childhood diseases that have been eliminated in the Caribbean through vaccination. The Caribbean has led the world. So if we could do this through the childhood disease vaccines against measles, mumps, rubella, diphtheria, polio, tetanus, whooping cough, right? We've done this with these vaccines. So let us now ensure that everyone gets vaccinated against COVID so that we can restore some semblance of normality before it is too late. Thank you.
Thank you too, and good night, Dr. Figueroa. Thank you for joining us all the way from your home in Jamaica.
Thank you.
Thank you and good night. And now back to our studios where we'll ask Dr. Arriaga to have his final words.
Well, again, you know, I just agree 100% with what Dr. Figueroa is saying. You know, vaccine is there. Vaccine technology has been there for years. It's not happening just 6 months ago. mRNA, you know, vaccine technology has been for the past at least 10, 15 years. When started using, try to get vaccination against some type of cancers. So this is not new technology. We use all technology have been using in the past years, try to manufacture vaccines that they're going to be more effective and efficient to control diseases. So this is not something that happened 6 months ago. The vaccines, they are effective. And we know because we have studies and trials that have been showing all the vaccines that are effective. From the mRNAs, so we're talking Pfizer, Moderna, through the adenovirus vaccine like AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson. And we have also the new vaccines that are coming in the near future too. Like we have inactivated viral vaccines too. There are a lot of questions supposed to be answered. The boosters and where we're standing, how much of the amount of immunity this vaccine is supposed to be given. But so far so good. All the trials and studies that we have been done is show that the vaccines, they are efficient enough to control the infection. To reduce the possibility you get sick, but not only that, to reduce the possibility to die of the disease, you know. And then why are you supposed to be so resistant to open the doors for something that gives you protection? Because you don't know the effects. If you want to talk about those things, try to approach to a physician, to the doctor, or to the person who's supposed to have more information. And we will try to clear that kind of, you know, popular disbeliefs and disinformation has been there. Not because you go on the internet, you will find people who are supposed to be telling you they are experts in COVID. This is the reality. So people that are in front of you on the internet, they don't even see and touch a patient with COVID. They don't even know what the disease is. Approach to your doctors and physicians supposed to have enough experience with that. And we'll try to inform you and educate you about what is happening in things. We are not trying to kill you. We're trying to save our community. You don't know what is going to happen. We are in a third wave of the disease right now. And they will start hitting us really bad in the next few weeks, I believe. And then we need to be protecting our community, and we need to try to get them to understand that going to the hospital is not the way to go. Vaccination is the way to go because that will protect them to go to the hospital. And will save your lives. We're not finished in the ventilator. You're not finished with the tube. The ventilator will not kill you. It's the disease that is killing the disease. It's the patient. And the ventilators, they are the way just to make the patient to get better in a sense that give you time for a patient to control inflammation. There is nothing that controls that thing once you are very sick, you know. And once you are into severe disease, it's a high possibility you could die. So you have to be careful. Try to keep at home, you know, stay at home. Try to wash your hands, as you said. Try to use your mask all the time, you know. Try to protect yourself the best you can. Get vaccination. Vaccinate your family. Now we have a story that we're showing with children. So in a few months, we'll get information about our children, how they're supposed to be vaccinated or not. They are also very sensitive to the disease. There are children die of the disease. This is not a disease only of elderly people and those things, or patients that have diabetes or immunosuppression or they have hypertension. It's a disease that is spreading in the community rampantly, and they are killing a lot of people. A lot of people that are dying right now, they are not elder people. They are young people. We have people 20s, 30s, 40s dying of the disease. And we can do nothing. What the patient is in the ventilator, we can do absolutely nothing. The patient died without hope.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Arriaga. And once again, I like what you said, without hope. We do hope that you will take the time to get the facts and understand that you have the right to ask any question and to get the answers. And after that, we encourage you to get the vaccine. On behalf of the Ministry of Health and of course Channel 5, we'd like to thank you for joining us for our show tonight, and we encourage you to join us next week when we continue with our conversations to ensure that you get the facts. Good night. I'm William Neal.